Japan was never supposed to be rich. A century ago, the world looked at Japan and saw cheap labor, a place to make simple things: cloth, silk. At most, Japan would sew the world's shirts. It would never build the world's machines. Japan decided the world was wrong, and it chose the hardest possible ground to prove it on. The machine that sat at the very top of the modern economy, the automobile. Almost nobody believed Japan could do it, and the first time it tried, it failed so badly the country nearly gave up for good. Behind that failure lay one long argument. On one side stood nearly everyone who mattered, certain it could not be done. On the other, a stubborn few who decided that it would. Start with why it looked impossible. A car is one of the hardest things a nation can learn to build. Thousands of precise parts, made cheap enough that an ordinary family can afford one. In 1950, only a few of the richest countries on Earth could manage it. Japan was not one of them. The market had already ruled Japan out. Before the war, American cars owned the Japanese road. Ford and General Motors built them right inside Japan, and together they held more than 90% of the market. Japan's own car makers had 3%, and they lost money on nearly every car. No sane investor would touch them. Then the war left Japan in ashes, and the verdict only hardened. The most powerful man in the country made it official. His name was Ichimada. He ran the Bank of Japan, and they called him the Pope, because in a nation with almost no money, he alone decided who got it. Cars, he said, were a luxury Japan could not afford. It should make textiles and toys, the things it was good at, and buy its cars from America. The World Bank said exactly the same. Every voice that counted agreed. Stay in your lane. But a few refused to listen, and they had been refusing for decades. Before the war, it was the army. From 1918, it had quietly paid to keep Japan's money-losing truck makers alive, because a country that means to be powerful cannot depend on foreigners to build its machines. In 1936, it taxed Ford and General Motors until they gave up and left, and handed the market to two homegrown companies. One was Nissan. The other had started out making looms. That one was Toyota. In 1933, Kiichiro Toyota bet his family's weaving machine company on a wild idea, that Japan could build automobiles. It bled money for years. His own partners were sure he would ruin them. He pushed on anyway, and after the war, when the Pope moved to kill the industry for good, the builders fought back. Their champion was Hayato Ikeda, a future prime minister and a ruthless one. He once told Parliament he did not care if the drive to build heavy industry pushed a few small businessmen to suicide. It cost him his job. It did not cost him the argument. For 2 years, he fought the Bank of Japan over whether Japan should make cars at all, and the builders won. Japan would have a car industry, not because it earned a profit, because the nation decided it must exist. Now someone had to build a car the world would actually buy. The man who staked everything on it was a salesman. Shotaro Kamiya, who ran Toyota's sales company. In 1955, he traveled across the United States and saw the future. Small cars starting to fill the American roads. Get in now, he decided, before the door closes. Even his own board told him no. The gap between Japan and Detroit was too wide. Wait 5 years, they said. Wait until we're ready. Kamiya wouldn't wait. On August 25, 1957, 2 little Toyota Crowns were hoisted onto a ship in Yokohama, bound for California, the first cars Japan ever sent to America. In Los Angeles, they threw a party. Toyota's men stood on the dock in tuxedos. Miss Japan laid flowers across the hood. Reporters called the little Crown a baby Cadillac, and dealers swore they could sell hundreds a month. Kamiya wired home, ecstatic. Build 100,000 a year. Then somebody drove it onto the freeway. Japan's roads were made of dirt and stone. No car there ever ran close to 55 miles an hour. The instant the Crown reached highway speed, its little engine buckled. The power bled away. The engine overheated and drank oil by the quart. Kamiya wired home a second time. Call it off. By 1960, Toyota had sold 316 cars in America. The shipments stopped. And Eiji Toyota, the founder's cousin, flew to Los Angeles to fire half of his own staff. Back home, the failure looked like proof. Maybe the Pope had been right all along. Maybe Japan should quit, go back to the looms and the silk, and make what the world actually wanted from it. They had chased this dream for 25 years and still couldn't build a car an American would buy. Every reasonable voice said the same word: stop. Toyota didn't stop. It pulled its cars off the American market, but it refused to leave. It sent its engineers to live in the United States, to learn the roads and the drivers that had beaten them. They came home and built a new car from the ground up, made for the country that had humiliated them. They called it the Corolla. This time, the car did not fail. This time, Americans could not get enough of them. In 1960, Americans bought 1,800 Japanese cars. In 1970, they bought nearly 500,000. The cars America had laughed at were taking its market by storm. Asked if the Japanese imports bothered him, Henry Ford II didn't bother to pretend. They sure as hell do. Here is what the experts missed. They were right about Japan in 1950. It was poor, and it was behind. But they believed that was a life sentence, that a country must accept whatever the market grants it. It doesn't. What a nation is good at is not fixed by nature. It is a choice. You can climb into a whole new industry, but only one way: by making the thing you are bad at and surviving the long, humiliating years of being bad at it. Every rich country on earth climbed exactly that way. They shielded their industries and bet on what they couldn't yet do. Then, safe at the top, they turned and told everyone below them to do the opposite, to know their place, to stay in their lane. Japan refused to stay in its lane, and that is why today you know the name Toyota.